What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Beyond the Take. TJ Wengert here with you, and today we are running through an updated 2026 NFL mock draft. Been a few weeks, actually, I think coming close to on 2 months from my last mock draft. So felt it was time to go ahead and update this, and then next week, going to go ahead and talk about stock up, stock down for some of these prospects that will be included in today's video. So we're in the thick of it, everybody. NFL draft season is not necessarily fully here. I think most people jump on board probably around December, January, but now we've got some updated college tape. We have an idea of where teams in the NFL are maybe looking forward a year for their team building plans. So it's a really exciting time, and man, it feels like we're starting to hit full swing for the draft cycle. So with all that said, let's go ahead and update my 2026 NFL mock draft, kicking things off with the New York Jets. And this is draft order based on Tankathon pre-Thursday Night Football. So don't yell at me about the draft order. I made it match their site, which is based on the current standings and then strength of schedule. And this is, again, pre-Thursday Night Football between the Cardinals and Seahawks. Should be a great game. So if anything I say about those two teams who are, weirdly enough, picking back-to-back in this mock, anything I say about them that sounds outdated, that would be why. But we kick things off with the New York Jets. And I'm going to go with LaNorris Sellers, number 1 overall. I think week over week, he's gotten better. There's still some things that I want to see him improve upon, including, time to throw and just how long he's holding on to the ball in general in the pocket and trying to decrease that pressure to sack ratio. But, in a quarterback class that's still looking for its QB1 to fully emerge, we'll talk a little bit more about that here in just a couple of picks. Sellers versus the guy I have going next off the board in the quarterback rankings in this mock, not my rankings, but just how I have it playing in this mock. It's going to be a fun battle the rest of the way for them to watch because one's coming off a really big game, kind of feels like he's got the momentum right now. But LaNorris Sellers has all the tools in the world that you would want at that position. And you're talking about a Jets offense that, yes, has Justin Fields under contract for 1 more year. So you could start Fields, sit Sellers, continue to develop him. And it's a similar enough offense to where you could make that work. Then we get to the New Orleans Saints. And I've gone nothing but quarterback in my 2026 mocks thus far for the Saints. You could go Garrett Nussmeier here, reunite him with his dad. I've done that 1,000 times, though, so Saints fans just know I did think about that. But I wanted to give you something different here. And also, we've got to talk about it. Ruben Bain's the best player in college football thus far in the season. And it's a travesty. I tweeted out the other day responding to updated Heisman rankings, and Bain was nowhere in the top 12. That's criminal. He's been the best player in college football this far this season. Love the body, 275 pounds. Versatility across his alignment on the defensive line, a ton of power. And then you look at his bend, and he looks like the 2023 Ruben Bain, that true freshman version of himself where not only did he have the power, but he had the bend to be able to dip the corner, ankle flexion, hip flexion for days, and then turn those pressures into sacks, hopefully more a little bit down the stretch. But also I think he's setting up Akeem Mesidor for a ton of kind of cleanup duties. Mesidor's been great too. Don't want to take that away from him, but I think Bain has been stellar so far this season. And I do think those pressures are going to convert to more sacks. You get some alignment versatility here. And the New Orleans Saints are, no disrespect, Saints fans, it's a bad roster. You just got to go best player available. And really, this is me kind of planting my flag. If the draft were tomorrow, if there's a non-quarterback going number 1 overall, it should be Ruben Bain. He should be the first non-quarterback off the board. He has been unbelievable this year at Miami. And to me, at this point, I haven't put up my big board yet. When I put it out, if I were to put it out tomorrow, he'd be the number 1 guy on my big board. All right, then we get to the Miami Dolphins. I am going to go quarterback here just because, look, I get it. I mean, Tua Tagovailoa's got a ton of dead money next year if they release him. But in the day and age of Matt Ryan, record cap hit to the Falcons, Russell Wilson, record cap hit to the Denver Broncos, we're in this day and age where teams would rather swallow that for a year and then move on than deal with it and then, address it the year after. They'd rather just go ahead and get their guy now. I'm going to go Fernando Mendoza right here. For me, I'll be completely honest, it's hard for me to imagine a world where Mike McDaniel's still coaching this team if they are drafting a quarterback. It feels like Tua and McDaniel are very much tied at the hip because even if you move on from McDaniel, that offense is built for Tua Tagovailoa. If McDaniel couldn't do it, I don't see another play caller coming in and revitalizing that offense in a way that McDaniel did when he first got there. So I think once you get rid of one, you're getting rid of the other one way or another, dead cap hit or not. But let's just say there is some hypothetical fantasy where Mike McDaniel's still there and he's still running those RPOs. That's what Mendoza does at such a high level right now. He's a quick processor. He's a smart guy above the shoulders, and he's got an NFL caliber arm. So, coming off that Illinois game, a lot of that was RPOs, a lot of throws underneath 10 yards, but the fact of the matter is he runs those RPOs quick and efficiently, and the ball comes out, and it's got a ton of juice on it, and it can fit it into tight windows. But he also throws the ball really well to the sidelines. He's got a big NFL caliber arm there. Only one big-time throw, but the one big-time throw was a good NFL caliber big-time throw. So there's stuff to like there. I do think he's aided by that system. But at this point, again, quarterback one is still up for grabs. Sellers has all the tools in the world. But Mendoza right now feels like he's starting to gain some momentum. And again, it's a system that's friendly to him and his play style. And he won't be a guy like Cam Ward last year where it's 4 big-time throws here, 5 this week, 3 more that week. It's going to be probably 1 or 2 at a time. And honestly, his best throw of the year was in their opener, and it got dropped. But I've been impressed with him. He looks like an NFL starting quarterback. And I don't think it's impossible for him to go somewhere here in the top 5 to 10, depending on how it finishes up the rest of the way. They still got to play Penn State. They still got to play Michigan, Ohio State. So there's still a lot of big games left for Fernando Mendoza, but passed the first test with Illinois. I know they were banged up, but that was the first test, and he passed it. So I think Miami's going to be looking for a quarterback. Let's go Mendoza there at 3. To the Tennessee Titans, I've been saying it all draft cycle. Jordyn Tyson, it's good to see PFF's got him up to 6. To me, he was from the start of this process, the top 5 to 10 player in this class. And it feels like consensus is starting to pick that up. Look, Calvin Ridley, when he is open, Cam Ward is not on the same page with him. And then when Cam Ward is on the same page with him, he's dropping passes. I think you could still roll with him for another year just to have a compliment to Jordyn Tyson. And I think I like Ayumanor has been pretty solid this year, but he also battles drops. And I know Jordyn Tyson had his drop issues last year, but I think we're already starting to see that's starting to right. It's, the ship's starting to right itself this season at Arizona State, but he's clear-cut the best receiver in this class. And I love Makai Lemon. I had Makai Lemon going earlier in this first round that I've seen in most mock drafts this cycle. So no, I love Makai Lemon, but Jordyn Tyson's clear-cut the best receiver in this class. And I think adding him into, specifically, I like Ayumanor long-term. I think that's a great 1-2 punch. Ayumanor, the big body, kind of physical X type. Tyson can place an X, but he's your route running savant who's going to be an assassin in that 10 to 19 yard range, but also has speed to stretch the field. So I think it's a great compliment to Ayumanor, and it gives Cam Ward a great 1-2 punch moving forward, with Tyson being that number 1 in that 1-2 punch. New York Giants are next up here at 5. A couple different tackles that are going to come off the board back to back here. I'm going to go ahead and stick with Spencer Fano. To me, he was the better of the 2 Utah tackles in that Utah-Texas Tech game. Neither one of them were great. Texas Tech definitely won that battle in the trenches, but Fano was definitely the one that, to me, looked a little bit better and looked like a guy who could play on Sundays versus Caleb Lomu. That was the game where it's like, yeah, 1 more year. Come out in 2027. You're going to be all the better for it. So I'm going to go Spencer Fano here, and that's one part when we got to see Andrew Thomas on Sunday Night Football against the Chiefs. He looked like Andrew Thomas of old. But then he was on a pitch count, and I also saw that he left the game early with an injury. So TBD on what the status on Andrew Thomas is. If he gets injured again this year, the honorable mention here is Trevor Gooseby, who's going to be the pick here at 6. I would go Gooseby, and then honestly, we're at a point now where you can't count on Andrew Thomas if he's going to continue to miss time. You need to draft a franchise left tackle. Andrew Thomas was great that 1 year he was fully healthy, but it might be time to turn the table. But because I don't know any more information about that here on Thursday, September 25th, I'm going to wait. I'm going to go with the college right tackle, Spencer Fano. He's got to add some size, but man, if you told me Andrew Thomas was healthy and then you got Fano there to play right tackle, and that's your tackle tandem of the future protecting Jackson Dart, I'd be really excited about it. Plus, it feels like an offensive line that really had a hard time establishing the run. We saw a little bit more about Cam Scadaboo this last week. Started to look a little bit more efficient, but still, it felt like a lot of him making a guy miss the line of scrimmage, and then a lot of creativity from there versus let's getting a drive off the line of scrimmage from our offensive line and then let Cam Scadaboo put a move on a guy 3, 4, 5 yards down the field. So I think Fano helps out Scadaboo from that standpoint as well. And like I said, Goosby's going to be the pick here, offensive tackle from Texas. He plays left tackle this year, but he has played both left and right. So I think there's some versatility here for the Houston Texans. Ariante Ursary, I think, has a sub 50 PFF grade, so it's not been pretty thus far for Ariante Ursary. And preseason, there was a lot of talk about him battling it out at right tackle. So whatever the long-term plans are there for Ariante Ursary, who I think is a good football player and will ultimately pan out, thought it was a good value there at the top of the second round this last year's draft. So that means Goosby's playing right tackle. I like his left tackle tape more, but there's also more at left tackle than there is at right tackle. So be it. I trust the talent. I trust the athleticism. I think it'll work out. But there's also a world where I could see you drafting Gooseby and then you move Ursary over to the right side. And that might be better for both of them as well. So you got some flexibility here. And again, if Andrew Thomas gets hurt, and that's going to be another serious, absence for Andrew Thomas this year, I would go Gooseby at 5, and then I think the decision is really easy here for the Houston Texans. You go Spencer Fanow, that's your right tackle of the future, and then you draft and develop, or you continue to develop Ariante Ursary, who you just drafted. And then it's clear-cut, Ursary stays on the left, Fanow plays on the right. To the New England Patriots, they get one of the best football players in this class. They need a safety. Caleb Downs is going to bring a huge upgrade at that position. A guy who's awesome inside the box, a sure tackler, a great coverage player over the middle, but also could be a true free safety and line up deep over the middle and cover a ton of ground too. So kind of a jack of all trades. And I feel like it's kind of one, that's a good Patriots defense in my eyes, but that's kind of the safety positions, the one spot where I see them lacking. And Caleb Downs falls into your lap here at 7. I mean, how could you not be excited about that as a Pats fan or specifically as Mike Vrabel? And plus, we're talking about Mike Vrabel, drafted an Ohio State guy. Not that big of a reach, right? All right, let's get on to the Las Vegas Raiders here at 8. Peter Woods. Hey, look, I know Clemson's been disappointing. Peter Woods is not part of that. Like, there's a lot of contributing factors for why Clemson's 1-3 to start this year. Peter Woods is getting a ton of attention on the defensive line. And that's not necessarily his fault, but you see him play the run, and even against a double team, he's still got it. He's still one of the best players in the class. And if I were to do a big board tomorrow, he'd be player number 2, right behind Ruben Bain. I still love me some Peter Woods. I wish there was more pass rush production, but this is also a Raiders team that just got rid of Christian Wilkins and has a huge hole in the middle of that defense. So I think Peter Woods immediately reinforces that team's run defense. And then you're just hoping whatever you get out of him as a pass rusher, can we get him to take a step forward? And if he does, that's just the cherry on top. So still one of the best players in this class. Perfect position to need, perfect fit within that Raiders defense. To the Cleveland Browns here at 9. I'm going to go with Garrett Nussmeier here. So I thought about Nussmeier at 3 to the Dolphins, Mendoza here. But I decided to go the other way around. One, because Mendoza's coming off the big game. Let's kind of lean into that, if you will. But Garrett Nussmeier is also a really good scheme fit for Kevin Stefanski, right? Like, look at the quarterbacks he's had good success with the exception of Baker Mayfield and his little like shining stint for what it was there in Cleveland at the end of his second year and whatnot. But like specifically Kirk Cousins. No one's clamoring as Kirk Cousins is like elite arm, top 5 in the league, top 10 in the league. And I've seen some people comp Garrett Nussmeier to Kirk Cousins. Personally, it's Tony Romo for me, but like I could see the Kirk Cousins comp. So I think Nussmeier is a hand in glove fit for that offense. Obviously, experience in play action, experience under center. This team definitely needs to bolster its offensive line. It also needs to bolster its offense as a whole, specifically at receiver. That's what we're going to do in my next pick. But I also thought about offensive tackle there too. So there's just really a lot of work to be done there. And I know they just drafted 2 guys. We haven't seen Dylan Gabriel. We haven't seen Shedeur Sanders. So as of this time, September 25th, those are 2 unknown commodities. Who knows what we're going to get out of that? Maybe Cleveland's not drafting, a quarterback next year because Gabriel's awesome. Sanders is awesome. And instead we're going offensive tackle and then receiver or vice versa. Would love for that to be the case. But right now, those are 2 unknown commodities. And what I do know is Joe Flacco is not it. So I'm going to go Garrett Nussmeier here at 9. Denver Broncos, the laziest draft pick I could possibly make here is Kenyon Sadiq. It was a 2-year deal for Evan Ingram. So, if you look at the guarantees, they could cut him next year, literally going into 2026. And it'd be $5.5 million dead cap, but they would save about the same amount of money. So there is a world where they could just move on from Evan Ingram. But there's also a world where you play Kenyon Sadiq in line. And by the way, this guy has been awesome as a blocker this year at Oregon. So there's a world where you let Evan Ingram play slot or off the line of scrimmage as a tight end, and Sadiq is your inline tight end, and you utilize that blocking. But I think long-term, whether you keep Ingram or you don't, this is your guy. This is that joker long-term for Sean Payton. Great after the catch, awesome athlete. You're starting to see some improvement in his route running, sure-handed, and then also the plus of his blocking ability. He's not quite George Kittle, but I'd probably put him a tier below that. If you're going to use the Todd McShay, 1 to 5, 1's being absolute elite. He's probably 1.5 to 2 there as a blocker too. So you're talking about a phenomenal athlete who brings it, especially after the catch as a receiver, and you get that blocking ability. This has got Sean Payton written all over it. Then we get to the Dallas Cowboys here at 11. Another one of the big risers this draft cycle has been Mansour Delane. He does not play interior offensive line. It is cornerback from LSU, Mansour Delane. And I got to shout out Alex from Hail Mary. We had him on Hail Mary Sports, that is, on YouTube. Definitely give him a subscribe and go watch his content. We had him on for our cornerback rankings episodes. And since the summer, he's had Delane as CB1. Credit to him. He thought it was a hand-in-glove fit with him going to LSU, what he does well, what that program brings out of cornerbacks, and he has been on the money. And look, simply put here, my argument's going to be, there's a lot of arguments. One, you can just watch the tape and see that coverage unit right now is not meshing with Matt Eberflus. And I'm not entirely sure Mansour Delane, I want to see him playing in a lot of cover too. So it's going to be interesting to see like what Eberflus coverage splits are by the end of the year and where I think Delane and Jermod McCoy are and how they might fit into that. But to me, those are the two top corners in this year's class. McCoy hasn't played yet, but we'll see. I think Delane's definitely earned the spot to be either CB1 or CB2, depending on McCoy and his return and if he declares. But that being said, they just need to bolster that cornerback room. Look, Russell Wilson threw for 450 yards against that team. And then the 2 other weeks has looked abysmal. One of these things does not match the rest. And I think that ultimately points you towards, Dallas's defense, in specific, their secondary is not very good. Also, you could look at their most recent game. Caleb Williams, Remo Dunze, big plays, all Luther Burden on the flea flicker. I mean, big plays all around for that Chicago offense. That one, Ben Johnson, I think called a big game. Caleb Williams executed on that great game plan. And that's part of it. But also, the Cowboys secondary has been rough with a capital R. So, yeah, I think it's time to bolster that unit. Delane, to me, has been the best corner in college football thus far. On to pick number 12, Carolina Panthers. This is where I promised Makai Lemon is going to come off the board here. I get it. He's not an ex-receiver, but he's so good as a flanker or a slot that I think he should be going top 15, top 6, top half the first round of mock drafts. And I just have not seen that. More often than not, he's been back half the first or not included at all. And I think that's criminal. And this is a Carolina team that has its ex-receiver. Ted McMillan is a stud. Piggybacking on Mike Renner's take here, if I were to redraft and have my choice of like, this is my receiver of the future, I would take Ted McMillan over Marvin Harrison Jr. right now. And I don't think that's super surprising considering the week Marvin Harrison Jr. is coming off of. But given who they were at prospects, especially who we thought Marv was going to be as a prospect coming out of Ohio State, that'd be criminal to think about me saying just 2 years later. So, I think this team has its ex-receiver, and that frees up Lemon to be exactly what he is, an excellent Z or a slot receiver. But honestly, I like him as a Z here, and you play Jalen Coker as your big power slot. Love what he is after the catch, really good route runner, and I think he's got more physicality than some people have given him credit for, both in regards to taking hits over the middle, but also the acrobatic catches he's capable of making on the sideline. Really good body control, love the hands, love the yards after the catch. This would be an awesome compliment to Tedero McMillan. And man, this would get me pumped up for what Bryce Young could potentially be going into the next season. Kansas City Chiefs, how fun is this? You see Kansas City picking before Chicago. That's also part of the advantage of using the take-a-thon, order. You just don't always see this. All right, but the 13th pick in this mock draft is going to be CeCe Maui Noah, the right tackle from Miami. Look, Juwan Taylor, whether it's the illegal shifts or it's the false starts or it's just the on-field play, I think he's leaving a lot to be desired for this Kansas City offense. So I think right tackle is going to be a position. And I'm really just curious where we are in regards to like, hey, could Jalen Moore just play right tackle for this team? Because they might be better for it. But I don't know. They haven't made that switch yet. Either way, I'm looking at right tackle as a big position of need. And yes, it's back-to-back years you take a first-round tackle. But when you see the 2 Super Bowls that Patrick Mahomes has lost, is that a bad thing? Is that not something you would want to ensure with a guy you're paying $50+ million a year for? So as I do my best, William Shatner from Star Trek. But I think CeCe Maui Noah, one, he gives you that bookend tackle of the future that is good for Pat, but also what this guy brings as a run blocker. I mean, this guy paving the way for Pacheco and hopefully Brashard Smith going into year 2, getting more run and so on and so forth. Sign me up for that. So the arm length is going to be the big thing for Maui Noah. I think he's going to be right at 33 inches, but he's going to be right on the borderline. So maybe he's a guard, maybe he's a tackle. But for right now, I'm evaluating him as a right tackle, and I think that would be a great plug-and-play option there for Kansas City. Next up, Chicago Bears. This is where I'm going to have Jermod McCoy come off the board. Has not played a game yet this year, but preseason, my CB1. Love what he is in man coverage. But I also think, and Dennis Allen's going to play a ton of man coverage, but I also do think his feel and zone coverage is solid and probably a little bit better than Mansour Delane. So I did consider McCoy over Delane for Dallas. But again, McCoy hasn't played a game yet. Delane's been one of the big stories so far of college football, at least from a draft prospect perspective. So I wanted to lean into that a little bit more. But you could easily just flip these 2 picks, and I think Delane would be an awesome fit for Dennis Allen, no doubt about it. And McCoy might be a slightly better fit for Dallas. But let me know your thoughts if you're a Dallas or a Chicago fan and if you've watched these guys. But either way, Jalen Johnson out for the entire season. I think you've felt that absence in the Bears secondary. Again, I know they're coming off, Tyreek Stevenson, probably his best game of the season, and they did a pretty good job against Dallas's offense. But it was a game where CeeDee Lamb got hurt, and basically the offense had to be funneled through George Pickens. And, when it's all going through GP, you can kind of like focus your attention there. So I think one more cornerback to complement Jalen Johnson would go a long way to bolstering that secondary. But there's a handful of needs on that defensive side that I wouldn't have hated here, but I thought Jermon McCoy was the best value here for the Bears. Pick 15, Los Angeles Rams. I'm going to break my cornerback rankings. In a lot of ways, I would want to go Avion Terrell. I'm a little bit of a holding pattern right now for A.J. Harris. I want to see how he plays this week against Oregon. I don't think this season's been that good for A.J. Harris off the rip. So I'm going to go with Keith Abney, who has been absolutely stellar this season and was a preseason, top corner for me. Not number one, but he was in the top 5. Big fan of his. Actually, he might have been 6 right behind DJ McKinney, but still, he's right around that part of my cornerback rankings. But he's been stellar this season. And it's also tough because the last game we saw the Rams play, we saw Darius Williams and Emmanuel Forbes just getting shrugged off of A.J. Brown. And it's because they're too small / Forbes is more slightly built than I would say short. But two guys who can't keep up with the physicality and the play style of a receiver like A.J. Brown. You know who can? You know who could be that man press corner to go get in his face? I'm not saying he'd stop A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown's an elite receiver. I'm not saying that off rip, but who has the physicality and who wants the smoke enough to be able to go match A.J. Brown? Keith Abney's the guy that I would, of my cornerback rankings, he'd be the next guy up for me in that. So, and he's played great. He's coming off an interception this last week, I believe. Maybe it was the week before, but he's been stellar. Every game I've watched so far for Arizona State this year, he has continued to check the boxes for me. So I think this is the big physical boundary corner that the Rams just do not have right now. And they're the one team that continues to play the Eagles close. The playoffs last year and then this past weekend, and they've kind of added, they add Poona Ford because they're like, you know what, we need to be able to stop Saquon Barkley in the run. Well, that addition paid off dividends this past weekend. This could be the next wrinkle, right? Okay, what's the next thing we need to beat the Eagles? Oh, we need a physical A.J. Brown answer. I think Keith Abney could be that dude. Washington Commanders next up here at 16. I'm going to go Keldrick Falk. That means Keldrick Falk over TJ Parker. And I still like Parker. We're going to talk about him in just a moment, but this is one part Clemson's D-line's been a little disappointing. TJ Parker hasn't had an elite season, but also Keldrick Falk. He has lived up to the billing. He will be 20 years old when he's drafted. He is a high-end run defender who sets a great edge on outside runs. But also, we're starting to see the pass rush development for a young guy with an abundance of power. We're starting to see the cross chop. We're starting to see the arm over move, and we're starting to see these pressures turn into sacks. So I feel like we're starting to step in the right direction for Keldrick Falk. We're starting to see that potential and what we saw last year, and in those moments really continue to grow on that. And we're talking about one of the younger prospects in this class. And I think Dan Quinn would just be chomping at the bit to get this guy. And I know a lot of Commanders fans and some beat reporters who were saying a defensive end who can play 3 downs. That was something we were looking for last draft cycle. Well, Keldrick Falk's definitely going to be that guy, and you get him a year late, but better late than never, right? And I think he would definitely fit the billing there. And then plus you're getting this kind of untapped potential. How good could this guy be as a pass rusher? So love that addition there for that Washington defensive line.
It is 32 beat writers season, August, when they can make you a lot of money, especially on a platform like Fast Draft. Doesn't have hundreds of best ball bro killers. So when there's an injury and you hear about it through 32 beat writers, you can run to the Fast Draft app and jump into a Flex 4 game. Just draft any 6 flex players. Top 4 enter your lineup every week. Or the Rabbit, 15-round best ball. Get your quarterback wide receiver stacks, get your running back sleepers. And if you follow 32 beat writers, you can jump into these draft rooms and be like, oh my God, I'm avoiding this guy at all costs, and I'm gobbling up all of this other running back before the larger public is fully aware, has fully digested the ramifications of the information that 32 beat writers is sharing. So go get Fast Draft, type in that code 32BW. 32BW is the code. Get you a $50 deposit match on Fast Draft. Now let's go start drafting faster.
As noted, Detroit Lions, I'm going to go TJ Parker here. Marcus Davenport hurt again. I hate to say it, but it was just kind of a matter of time, unfortunately, with just how his career's panned out. And they've gotten some nice production from some of the other complimentary edge rushers. But I do think there is a higher ceiling to be had there. And I do think eventually we could see where some of those other contributors maybe slow down a little bit over the course of the season as more tape gets on those guys. We'll see. Time will tell. But TJ Parker, this guy who is an awesome run defender, that in and of itself, as a compliment to Aiden Hutchinson, sub 32-inch arms, that's a great 1-2 punch there, because Parker is going to be your great edge-setting run defender where Hutchinson just can't always do that because of a lack of arm length. But then you're also talking about Hutchinson with this killer, swim move, and he's got a great spin move on top of that. He's this great bendy finesse rusher. And then you have TJ Parker, who is all power all the time. I want to run through your chest, and I'm going to have fun doing it. Like that in and of itself feels like a great 1-2 punch and allow you to play mismatch against tackles. Hey, this guy struggles against power. TJ, you're lining up against him. Hey, this guy really has a hard time against bendy edge rushers. Aiden, that's your guy. So you get to play mismatch if you're the Detroit Lions on defense there. So edge still a position need, and I really like the value here with Parker falling into their lap at 17. To the Los Angeles Rams, this pick comes courtesy of the Atlanta Falcons and the Jalen Walker trade last year. So let's have some fun. Let's go Dante Moore. We're obviously stepping into a huge weekend here for Dante Moore. He's got Penn State. Moore's looked good this year, but he's done it against some pretty lackluster competition. But NFL size, absolutely has an NFL arm. Good accuracy and ball placement, and then adequate athlete. So a lot of boxes are checked right there. And then you're talking about maybe he should go back to school for 2027, regardless of what I see this upcoming weekend. Might just be better for a guy who has pretty limited starting experience in college. Wasn't great at UCLA, then sat for a year, and now here we are at Oregon. Might be good for him to go back to school. But you also could sell me in an argument where he does declare, because this quarterback class is still looking for someone to emerge, and Moore has those tools. And now he gets to go to LA in a great scheme fit, stay on the West Coast, and then potentially still sit another year behind Matt Stafford. That could be the best case scenario there for Dante Moore, just as much as maybe going back to Oregon could be the best thing for him and position himself towards the top of the 2027 class. But a lot to be figured out, including this weekend with Moore taking on Penn State. But really interested in this fit here with Sean McVay, which we could say about a lot of quarterbacks. Hey, they're going to Sean McVay offense. I love that fit, but I really do think Dante Moore and that big arm would fit really well with what Sean McVay is trying to do. Pick number 19, Baltimore Ravens. I'm going to give them C.J. Allen. Just patrolling, Twitter on Monday Night Football. A lot of Ravens fans coming after Roquan Smith for that loss against the Lions on last Monday night. And also they didn't play Trenton Simpson one snap. So I don't know what the deal is with that, but former third-round pick just a handful of years ago. But seems like that might be a linebacker room needing some extra personnel. So I'm going to go with C.J. Allen to be the top off-ball linebacker in a very good off-ball linebacker class this season. Love what he is against the run. I do think there is some upside for him as a blitzer, but really I just love his instincts. He's fearless taking on blockers and ball carriers. And I think there's room for him to grow as a coverage player because he's a good athlete. It's just need to get your eyes. And then also just like anticipation, right? Like sometimes we say right place, right time, but sometimes that's anticipation putting you in the right place at the right time. So some of those things just need to come a little bit further along with Allen. But I think with more playing time, with more experience, those will slowly progress. All right, Cleveland Browns. Back to the Browns here at 20. This pick comes courtesy of the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Travis Hunter trade last year. I really thought about Caleb Tiernan here just for point of reference. Thought he played pretty well against Oregon. Isaiah World, I'm not in love with, if I'm honest. Caden Proctor needs to go back to school. Austin Barber, a little rich for me. So instead, I'm going to go with Denzel Boston here. Man, I have Cedric Tillman in 2 dynasty leagues, so I take no joy in saying this, but I think it's time to move on from Tillman. Jerry Jeudy can't quit the drops, so I still think receiver 1 is up long-term for grabs in Cleveland. And I think Denzel Boston would be a great guy to partner up with Garrett Nussmeier. Big, friendly quarterback-friendly frame, huge catch radius, comfortable working the sidelines. I don't think he's as explosive out of his breaks as someone like a Drake London and Ted McMillan, but he's not terribly far off. So like the athlete, love what he is as a red zone threat too, and an underrated route runner. Just going to be interested to see what the testing numbers kind of come in as. But Browns get to draft a quarterback, then they get to draft a potential receiver 1 in the future. And plus they have 2 great running backs to go with it. Need to overhaul that offensive line, no doubt about it. But if we were continuing this mock draft into a 2nd and 3rd round, like we will down the rest of this draft cycle, that would be where I get, a guard here, maybe another guard in the 3rd, or a guard and a tackle. You could patch up that offensive line needs on day 2 while still getting a headline talent at wide receiver here in the 1st. Pittsburgh Steelers at 21. Man, this is tough because I kind of want to go John Mateer just because he's been a great story so far in college football. Did have the hand injury. I don't think that messes up too much. But real quick, I did want to shout out, I'm going to go John Mateer here, but honorable mention to Ty Simpson, another guy with a huge game this weekend taking on Georgia. He was nails against Wisconsin. And if he plays that way against Georgia, he will be in the next first round of my next 2026 mock draft. He was that good against Wisconsin, and former 5-star recruit. He's kind of got that pedigree, and I think he's really starting to find his groove there at Bama. But we will see this weekend against Georgia. For the time being, though, to avoid getting roasted, I'm going to have John Mateer in the first round here. He's just been a great story so far this season. Great touch, really comfortable throwing on the far sideline. Snappy arm motion, quick release. Obviously super mobile and very shifty after the play. Even that Michigan game where there's a bunch of like, oh my God, look at that throw, look at that throw, look at that throw. there is still some like, hey, man, set your feet, slow down just a little bit. There's still some growing pains to be worked with. And there's a couple of times in that, Michigan game where he could have been picked off and that game could have played out a little different. So as much as people want to get carried away with John Mateer, especially from like a Heisman standpoint, I think that's definitely more warranted than maybe locked in first round draft status. There's a lot of good, though, that he's shown this year and that playmaking ability. Now we just got to tighten up a few more of those little growing pains. And can we just set those feet a little bit more frequently? And we still have a lot of this season left to go. He is injured, though, so he's going to have an absence. And I'm a little cautious about what he might be post-injury. That's just tough to have happen mid-season. But if he's the same guy and continues to work on those areas, I love it. And look, the Pittsburgh Steelers have not had a playmaking quarterback since pre-Ben Roethlisberger injury. And I get it. He's not like insane athlete playmaker, but like his ability to extend plays, escape the pocket when needed, shrug off a guy, a would-be, sack, or would-be a tackler, shrug them off and extend a play that way. That's just something that Pittsburgh has not had later Big Ben years. Kenny Pickett, really. And then obviously now with Rodgers or with Russ and, Fields was a different type of playmaker. So I think Mateer could kind of bring that magic that the Steelers just haven't had at the quarterback position. So I will go Mateer here, but honorable mention to Ty Simpson, huge game ahead of him this weekend. Minnesota Vikings is typically where I go corner for the Vikings, but Isaiah Rodgers has come off the game of his life, so I will hold off and instead go with running back Jeremiah Love. Aaron Jones is hurt. He's over 30. Like it's just, it's that time where it makes sense to move on from Aaron Jones. And then Jordan Mason, who's ran the ball really well, he got a 2-year extension. So like next year, we're entering a contract year for Jordan Mason. So, but I also just love like the thunder component of Mason plus like everything that Jeremiah Love brings to the table. He can run between the tackles. He's got his own physicality. We're starting to see a little bit more of that pass catching work. He had a nice one-handed catch this last weekend against Purdue for the Fighting Irish, but also his big play ability paired with Mason and his hard running between the tackles. That on paper is a great 1-2 punch. And I know the usage has been a little weird this year for Love, but I still think he's comfortably RB1 in this year's class, at least as of right now. All right. On to pick number 23, Arizona Cardinals. I'm going to go to the linebacker position and go with one of the big stories of college football, Arvell Reese. He's been a great run defender and an awesome blitzer in that Matt Patricia defense. Love how he's been so creative, utilizing him as a blitzer and taking advantage of that part of his skill set. And as I currently look at it, this Arizona Cardinals linebacking core, it leaves a bit to be desired. It's not a bad unit per se, but it could definitely use a little bit more oomph to it. So love what Arvell Reese brings to the table, both as a run defender, pass rusher, still some room to develop as a coverage defender, but play a lot of zone. I think Jonathan Gannon will be able to coach him up on that standpoint. And also it's just like a lack of playing time. He just needs a little bit more time on the field before he develops that coverage feel, but love what he is at tackling downhill as a linebacker. All right, on to number 24, the Seattle Seahawks. I'm going to go cornerback here. I originally had penciled in Keith Abney, but decided to make Keith Abney a Ram, and instead I'm going to give the NFC West Division rival Seattle Seahawks Avion Terrell. This is a defense that flies the football like no other. And again, I'm doing this before Thursday Night Football, so hopefully this is not outdated, and hopefully they actually continue to rally the football this evening. But that's been something that stands out every time I watch the Seahawks so far this season. And Avion Terrell is the exact same way. He's a smaller, slightly built corner, but he will fly to the football, specifically if it's a run play, which is super encouraging to see. And again, not the year that Clemson wanted, but he's not to blame for that. I think he's actually been really solid in coverage. Still a little small. And yes, now it's a cornerback room of like Josh Jobe and Terrell and Witherspoon in the slot. Not the biggest cornerback room, but damn, can these guys cover. And let's be honest, like they've been looking for a reason not to play Tariq Woolen since that rookie year where he had 6 picks. And I get it, he was good that year, but since then, he has just not been a good starting NFL cornerback, and I'm sorry. And case in point, week 1, getting out-jumped by Jake Tonjes as he's in position for that interception. I'm sorry. Tariq Woolen just is not it. And I think Avion Terrell is a sizable upgrade at that spot. All right, on to the Cincinnati Bengals here at 25. Interior offensive lineman Connor Lew's going to come off the board. They could definitely get better at center. Lew, simply put, is the best center in this class. Love what he would bring for a struggling run game. As a guy who has Chase Brown in a couple of dynasty leagues, like that offensive line has done him no favors from a run blocking standpoint. Connor Lew definitely paves a new way there forward, but also he's a sizable upgrade in pass protection. And like how many times we can see Joe Burrow get hurt before we're going to take steps in the right direction for pass protection. And I get it, Mims, former first-round pick. They spent a lot of money on Orlando Brown Jr., but specifically that interior, they've got to get better. And I think Lou is a huge step in the right direction. And I also think getting the right center kind of unlocks things for an offensive line. I think Connor Lew could be that type of fixture where it's like, okay, if There's only one new guy, but all of a sudden, Lou made things fall together in the right way. And I could definitely see that happening here for the Bengals if you fell into their lap at 25. Back to the Dallas Cowboys now. This pick is courtesy of the Green Bay Packers, Micah Parsons trade. Have it in a mock since then. Holy cow. Congratulations, Green Bay, for stealing that one. I'm not a Caleb Banks guy. Sorry, and he got hurt again. I'm not a Caleb Banks guy. I'm going to go Christian Miller here. I do think Christian Miller could be a first rounder. Long-limbed, great run defender with some promise as a pass rusher. And I know they drafted Mozzie Smith in the first round, but they just have not known what to do with him. Make him a 3-tech, has him lose weight, then try to gain it all back. And he has not held up at the point of attack as a run defender. I think Christian Miller, day one, is a sizable upgrade at that spot. And then in turn keeps Osa Odigizua, who is not the world's greatest run defender, not bad, but he does it more so by shooting gaps. With Miller two-gapping and taking up that attention and taking up so much space, makes it easier for Osa Odigizua to be that type of a run defender, but also just cleans him up and allows him to be a great pass rusher that he is and that they're paying him to be. So love that Christian Miller addition. Love him next to Osa Odigizua. To the Buffalo Bills, I'm going to go to Kamari Ramsey here. This safety unit's just got to get better. I like Dylan Thieneman, but Kamari Ramsey, got to go to Miss Flowers. He's just a great coverage player. And whether it's playing, slot post or if it's playing in twin state or two high looks, that Buffalo's kind of notorious for in the days of Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde. I think he fits into all of it too. But he's just that coverage boost they need on the back end of that defense. And he's a great playmaker. And think about how dangerous that offense is to face. And you start to fall behind, and all of a sudden you have to start taking these gambles, and you have to be more aggressive against the Bills. You have to seize their mistakes. What if Kamari Ramsey's the guy who's now taking advantage of your mistakes and putting the ball in the hands, Josh Allen, that much more over the course of a season, but even in a key game, So I love his playmaking ability and what that ultimately does for the Bills. And it's just anytime you can take the ball from the other side, takeaways are key, but when you're hitting the ball over to Josh Allen, takeaways are that much more paramount for my eyes. So love his playmaking ability and what that would do for that team. All right, Tampa Bay Buccaneers are next up here at 28. Love me some Cassius Howell. Don't think he'll be top 10 for me, at least not at this point, but love Cassius Howell. He's just not the biggest guy, but I think he holds his own against the run, but he's just not going to be your ideal, edge setting defensive end. I think he holds up, but we'll see what happens at the next level. I can see where there's a little bit of regression there. It holds up right now at college. But, dude, look no further than the 3 straight sacks against Utah State. 3 different ways of winning. This guy has speed. He can turn speed to power. He's got great bend. He's got inside counters. This is a pass rusher with a deep bag. And if you're willing to sacrifice a little bit of maybe not be may not be the best run defender in the world, but we're getting a great pass rusher, I think you're well worth taking Cassius Howell in the first round. And we're talking about the Bucs, who have Vita Vea, who's a monster against the run when he wants to be. And, still has Levante David, who holds his own there. And has some other guys who are pretty solid run defenders. So I think they have a little bit of room to be able to take a shot on a pass rusher here. Plus, it's a 1-year deal for Hassan Reddick. So, naturally, I'm just seeing Cassius Howell stepping right into that role. And Hassan Reddick, I don't think anybody's writing home about his run defense either. So it almost feels like they have a spot where Howell can step right in and be an impactful edge rusher. And I feel like, obviously this is PFF, Trevor Sikkema, he's a Bucs fan. He loves Cassius Howell. I feel like this would be something that makes him happy. So doing it for Trev. Let's get to the Indianapolis Colts here at 29. Came down between 2 linebackers here, Anthony Hill Jr. or Sonny Styles. I like them both. Styles is slightly better PFF grades. Former safety, you see that coverage ability versus Anthony Hill, who brings the kind of pass rush prowess. Not a great playmaker in coverage. I'm going to go with Anthony Hill Jr. here. I'm totally fine if you're a Colts fan. You're like, no, Sonny Styles. Totally get it. Could totally flip this pick. But I think Lou Anarumo has been really versatile and varied with the looks that he's played on defense this year, both with how he's playing coverages, but also who he's sending and how many and, all that sort of stuff. And Anthony Hill Jr., I think, just gives him one more weapon of a pass rush threat, specifically up the middle. And it's also a team that they have a lot of guys who can rush the passer. And we haven't seen that breakout from Leatu Latu. So TBD, maybe he'll have that step forward some point here in year 2. But it's like an okay edge unit. So I almost think bringing on Anthony Hill Jr., one, you could just play him at edge. Matt Miller from ESPN right now has him listed as an edge rusher. You could just do that. But also his blitzing ability from the inside might make life a little bit easier and might make life more manageable for Lou Anarumo with the cast of edge rushers who were good, just not great. So I think Anthony Hill Jr. kind of fills in the gaps there. And that's why I went with him over Sonny Styles. But both make a lot of sense to me. And I think that linebacker room could definitely get better. Pick number 30, I'm going to go to a group of 6 player here in Emmanuel McNeil Warren. To me, he's if there's a non-power 4 guy that's going to go first round, Let me just double check real quick. There hasn't been a whole lot of those guys. I mean, Notre Dame's independent, so that's a little different. But yeah, everyone else here, everyone else, all P4. That's actually kind of incredible. The non-P4 first-round pick would, to me, be Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. Love what he is, especially in the box, right? Great robber, but also love him as a tackler. Big body, long-limbed, long arms, and has a great knack to be able to punch the football out. Had a nice forced fumble week 1. So I think it's a safety room that leaves a little bit to be desired. Malik Mustafa, liked him coming out of Wake Forest, think he could be the free safety, while McNeil-Warren is kind of the strong safety, the box safety of the future years for that San Francisco defense. So really like that, but also wanted to shout him out. If there's like a group of 5, group of 6, whatever they're called now, to make it in the first round, I think Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, that's the guy. Chargers here at 31. We're going to have a couple of edge rushers come off the board. Khalil Mack's hurt, but also like getting up there in age. So I wanted to go ahead and address that. You could definitely go David Bailey, but honestly, David Bailey's been great. Still probably has some of those DPR concerns. Joshua Josephs has been awesome too. I put David Bailey in first round mocks and I haven't put Josephs in all of them. So I just want to go with Josephs here, but him, David Bailey, a probably off the rip DPR. But Joseph's got great arm length, so I can see a world, and he holds his own against the run pretty well in my eyes. 74.6, that'll play from a PFF grade standpoint. So I actually kind of like him as someone who could step in and play right away. But they also drafted Kyle Kennard, who could be that high motor, long limbed, early down run defender, and then you slot in Joshua Josephs as that pass rusher of the future. But Khalil Mack, we'll see what happens there long term. Tuli Tuipulotu, Joshua Josephs, Kyle Kennard. That's a solid 4, quartet, if you will, of edge rushers moving forward. And then to the Philadelphia Eagles, had to get a new name in here, someone that I have to give a shout out to, Daft on Draft. Corey and James, they're both awesome. Big fan of both their works, and I'll leave it at that. One of them may be coming on the show here pretty soon. But I'm going to go with Quincy Rhodes Jr., someone they had put me onto, and holy cow, really enjoyed getting caught up on Quincy Rhodes Jr. Big-bodied, 6'6", 275. Might be an inside guy, but honestly, I like that flexibility of playing him outside and then maybe inside on early downs. And he comes with a wicked inside spin move. So really big fan of Quincy Rhodes Jr. Really fun pass rusher there from Arkansas. And that will round it out. And I think Philadelphia is still looking, especially when you look at their edge guys, like Nolan Smith, not the biggest dude. I feel like they could use a little bit of size there on the edge. So I think Quincy Rhodes Jr. brings that to the table. But guys, that is it for my updated 2026 mock draft. Love to hear your thoughts about some of the new names, the big risers, or maybe even the guys that I didn't have in the first round. Maybe someone who was the first time round, or maybe you think next time I should have included in the first round. Whatever your thoughts are on this mock draft, let me hear it down below in the comment section, or if you're watching on X, reply back to this post. You can also just shoot me a DM, follow me on X at TJ Wengert, spelled TJ, and my last name is Wengert. So let me hear your thoughts, both in the comment section and on X, about who went too high, who went too low, who I should have included in this first round pick. But also let me know who your favorite team is and what you thought about the fit for your squad. That is always the most interesting conversation I have when talking about these mock drafts with fans, people in the comments, so on and so forth. So let me hear those thoughts down below. Definitely give a subscribe here to 32 Beat Writers. We are, like I said at the top, kind of just now entering the fun swing of draft season. So plenty more mock drafts, plenty more position rankings. Next week, we're talking stock up with a very special guest that I'm excited to have on the show for the first time. So definitely come back next week for that video. But I'm going to quit my rambling. I'm going to get out of here. Leave me those thoughts down below in the comments or in my DMs. Hope you guys enjoyed. Subscribe, like the video if you did. And until next time, my name is Teach. We are signing off.